Welcome to Freedom. This is today's edition of the Inter-University Debates on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. I want to take this opportunity once again to welcome back my panel and all your viewers from a series of celebrations we've had in the country. We had Easter, we had Eid al-Fitr, we had which other celebration? Very many of them, but welcome back from all those celebrations, and we thank you for keeping it Civic Space TV. Today, the debate is in education, and we are discussing the state of public education in Uganda, the case of 1 million dropouts from schools, specifically the lower education levels. Now, joining me in that conversation is a panel of distinguished young people in this country, whom I'll request in a minute to introduce themselves to you, our viewers, before we get into the depth of the conversation. I'll start with you at my extreme right.
Thank you very much, the moderator. My name is Lokii, Willy, and I am a recent student of Gulu University. I am looking to joining LDC, so I am doing law. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. You're most welcome, Council, and we wish you the best through LDC. Madam.
Yes, good morning to the viewers. My name is Piloya Babra Nyeko, and I am equally a recent student at Uganda Christian University, awaiting graduation and also being ushered into LDC. Yeah.
Well,
I'm happy to be here and a proud student or alumni of UPE. Yeah.
Wow.
Hello, dear viewers. My name is Reagan Mwebesa. I'm in my 4th year at Kyambogo University. I do land surveying. I serve the Students Guild as a guild president. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Mwebesa, Piloya, and Lokii. You're most welcome to Civic Space TV. Now, former student, still a student, students, we are discussing education, the status of education in this country. I want to start with you, Reagan. Give us a general overview, in your opinion, of the status of education in this country at all levels.
Well, I will start with what I potentially represent utmostly, and that is university education. I, for one, as a student, for example, in a public institution, would say that the education in this country isn't a priority. And I'm going to be unapologetic when I make that statement, because it's so unfortunate. For example, universities, the welfare of students isn't a priority to anyone in this country, and no one seems to talk about it. You imagine a parliament that is having increment on the budget of the speaker, they pass increment on the State House budget, but they do not at any one point consider increment on the university's expenses. We have halls of residence universities that are dilapidated. They are not even worth for anyone to step in, but students are residing in them. For example, Kyambogo University, halls in Makerere and across the country. No one seems to talk about it. Talk about secondary education, where students are subject to a new curriculum, where the teachers themselves are not prepared. Talk about primary education, where recruitment, for example, today at districts is paid for. So everything is a mess, and no one seems to talk about it, simply because maybe the ministry is reinforced and it has some packaging of a few individuals who think they will run the education sector the way it is. I think Uganda falling short, because globally 20% of the budget is supposed to be going to education. Currently, statistically speaking, Uganda spends 8% of its budget. You see, as per the GDP, we are supposed to spend 5% of the GDP. Globally, Uganda spends 2.2%. So education isn't a priority, and I will talk about it. And so many others that do believe in the ideology of education should be a priority should add their voice to mine. that our education isn't prioritized in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that general overview, Reagan Mwebesa. And being a guild president, it's important that you talk about what you said, the halls of residence in the universities. But I want to come to you, Lokii. Mwebesa says education is not a priority in this country. Is it indeed not a priority?
I think I'll pick up from where I stopped exactly. When Uganda gained independence, every other year, joining up to get us to where we are today was supposed to be about Ugandans solely. That said, the government recognized that education was not fulfilling what they expected, because the number of students that were enrolled in not only primary but secondary and universities at large was way less than the total population of the country. That then led into the incorporation of UPE schools 1997, and the idea was that as many people as possible are supposed to enroll. The idea of free education. Since we are individuals from different backgrounds, there are some that can afford private institutions and some that cannot. That then led to an increase from over 3 million enrolled students to about 5.6 million enrolled students, which was in all ways to say an improvement for the country. However, the right to education in the Constitution does not simply mean you should go to school, no. It includes, one, access to education, which is done by, of course, providing UPE and USE schools. The other is quality education. Now, it's not only about accessing schools and then what? It's also about the quality of education. Now, where I agree with the president here that education is not in any way given priority is because whereas schools are being created, I mean, go to villages, you'll find even a single block being called a seed school. Yes, they have put up schools, but the question on quality of the education is where the debate should be. Today, reports from UNICEF and UNESCO would show you that over 80% of students that have left primary education are not learned. They are not literate enough. Now, you have individuals who have papers, yes, but they do not have the content. And that is where education in the country is. It's very interesting to say that whereas East Africa makes a 4% share of GDP as the limit for education, Uganda, as you mentioned, only apportions 2.7 or 2.8. And yet our competitors, our neighbors, Tanzania apportions over 3.8, with Kenya apportioning over 4. That is why we are still lagging behind, because education is not just about learning. No, it is supposed to be a way to build the nation. You teach individuals critical thinking from education. That is why I think we are lagging behind, because we are not paying as much attention to the education sector.
Thank you so much. Very interesting. Piloya.
Yes.
Whenever we talk about education, the issue of the girl child rises. Traditionally in our homes and villages and everywhere, the girl child then was denied education. So why should a girl go to school? To do what? After all, she's getting married really soon. She's going to create a family. That's the education she desires. Teach her how to cook. Teach her how to wash clothing and do a bit of digging. That's all she needs. Today, girls are in school. What are girls getting from school?
Well, it's quite a broad question. It brings about the question of, you tackle the question of gender. But before we even get there, we should start from, where did we start from? What did history have for us? Where are we now? And where are we getting? Yeah. So like, for example, looking into the history of education in the 1962, as my brother stated, when education was first established, okay, what was the aim of the establishment? Who were the beneficiaries of this education, right? First, you will see that, well, it was established by the missionaries, and then, kids of the chiefs had to, they got chance to, an opportunity to, to learn, and then neglecting the majority of the people that did not have the privilege. Now, in that docket of people having the privilege, now you realize that it was still then the patriarchal society that we still have the effects even living on now. The girls were not in position to go to school. I mean, my grandmother tells me of a story of she couldn't go to school. She just stopped in P2 because, I mean, they told her, no, you can't go to school, you can't go to school. The brothers were going to school. The other day we had Miriam Atemi telling us that, why I stand up to struggle and strive so much for the girl child. It's because of what I really went through. They couldn't allow me to go to school. So that was the foundation back then. But again, this education was ushered in, like in the 1997, where the summit was held to ensure that there was equitable education. Everybody was going to school, whether you are a girl, whether you are a boy, indiscriminate, whether you're disabled, whether you are orphaned, yeah? The education was free for you. That is the UPE ushered in. Now, that is when the girl child gets the opportunity to get to school. However, this has also not yet realized its goals. There are still girls in the, if you realize that at the institutions, let me speak at the universities, public institutions, in classrooms, I'll speak for my own class, that there were many girls, even compared to the boy child. The question then brings to our minds, is it, has the goal been achieved of having equitable education? Are the girls now at the level of the boy child being educated? Or is all of us now achieving or attaining the goals that has been set back then in the 1997? Of course, it's still a question of the percentage that we are talking about. Back then, right now, and where? Look at in the rural areas. What are the challenges that the girl child still faces now? That is not, is it the girl who has gone to a UPE school? That is a very important and pertinent question. Because the equitable education and the accessible education that is being driven is it's targeted to the UPE, because it's offering quite free, though we now realize in this new financial year, the capitation of from 15,000, they've now increased it to 17,000, which still brings about the challenges. But we are saying that yes, now they have the access, but they have the access. What are their challenges? Can we tackle the challenges that they're facing before we can, So yes, the girl child has achieved, but there is still more to put to about the challenges, but also to still improve on the UPE. Before you cut me short, look at the UPE schools in the villages. I'll tell you for my own village, because I am always there on ground. You find a girl has not gone to school, they drop out in P6, in P2, you try to even push them for education, they're not going. Where are the interests of the people that probably who are the concerns? What is that we are putting to ensure that these girls stay in school? Is it because they lack the necessities for them to be kept in school? Or is it because they've lost interest? If they've lost interest, what is that we can help to boost their morale to come and stay in school? Because education is very important for the girl child.
Thank you so much. Reagan, when I come back to you, one of the things that come out from this education conversation is such that the education we get is supposed to create a citizen the country Uganda or the country East Africa or the country Africa desires to have today, tomorrow, and for the future. I want to take this to the content we get in school. When you look through primary, you went through that level. You know what is taught in there. Yeah. Go to secondary, running a new curriculum. Lower secondary. Go to A-level. Unfortunately, the rollout of the new curriculum has been cancelled at A-level. So people will come from O-level and go back to an old curriculum in A-level. Then go to university. When you look at what we get, is it the best a Ugandan should get to get that true image of a Ugandan that is going to grow and develop his country?
That's a very heavy question, because it poses a threat to some offices and so many people that bring bread to the table out of this education. I think it's kind of a conflicting answer, because in some settings students get what is expected, and in other settings students don't. And then, for example, let me paint this picture. For example, if you look at what technical institutions are giving to students, then 100% of what we need is coming from there. We have Nakawa Vocational, we have all these practical courses that they have stuck to values, they are still achieving. But when you look at the theoretical courses, for example, the National Council for Higher Education clearly stipulates that 8 weeks minimum for internship and school practice. Under the COVID times, we've been doing 6 weeks. I, for one, did internship in December, where I reported for intern on 8th of December in a real estate. It's an international company where I worked. I reported on the 8th of December. A week later, on the 15th, we closed the company for Christmas. We came in mid-Jan, and in Feb, we were back to campus for studies. People who did internship in the past did it for 10 weeks. So then that means that me, who did it for 3-4 weeks and gambled, I no longer get what I'm supposed to get. So the question is halfway answered. In practical settings, students get, and that is the minority. But in the majority, which is the higher institutions, people no longer get what they're supposed to get. Courses are not reviewed. Of recent, last year, we saw students from the Uganda National Students Association come out and say, you people, enough is enough. Review our courses. You imagine, it can be a priority of this country to pay whichever lawmaker to revise a law to raise the age limit. But it is not their responsibility to facilitate the National Council for Higher Education to push to review courses. That I'm studying a course that expired in 2015, and no one seems to talk about it. I pay 13 million cumulatively in a space of 4 years. And remember, this university is going to confer a degree on a land surveyor who has pursued a course that has not been reviewed for 8 years. This applies to most universities across this country, from Makerere. Most of these public institutions teach courses they have not reviewed. You see, when I talk about reviewing a course, it's basically the science and art of modifying this course to fit the environment today. If a surveyor of back in the days needed to, for example, know of the global navigation satellite systems, today we have laser scanning as the new normal. So you're supposed to modify this course such that this Reagan Mwebesa that jumps out of this institution can do laser scanning, and this benefits his society. But when you still do the packaging, let me just wind up in a minute. When you do the packaging of Reagan Mwebesa, who knows how to use a plain table that our forefathers used but does not apply the satellite systems, he does not get what he wants. So I would not want to pose a threat to whoever is pursuing courses out there, but the reality is that there is a very big question on the output depending on how things are being handled.
Thank you so much. Lokii, you see, he raises a very important aspect of reviewing courses and every other thing we study about. We all know there is a phenomena called evolution. It's very present in biology. It's very present in our social life. It's very present in technology. It's very in every sphere of life, in the economics and so on. Listening to the head of the National Curriculum Development Center, him state that we have a curriculum, for example, at some levels that has not been revised since 1995, since 1998, and in some instances since 1988. And he did talk about the developments in technology, from the table to the laser they use today. Go to these technical institutions. Government does not put the equipment. Students need modern equipment. Even the old equipment is not there. What threat does this pose to the professionals we are creating for this country, to build this country that is competing with China, that is competing with the United States of America, that is competing with Japan?
Impressive. Now, moderator, I think you heard somewhere that once upon a time, Uganda as an economy was slightly bigger than Singapore, was slightly bigger than what we now know as Dubai and UAE, but those are economies that have grown to, I think, triple us or quadruple us, and we are still static. You see, countries do not simply develop out of the blue. It's all about the labor and their application of technology. As I mentioned, if today, in an era that is technologically advancing, as a country we cannot apply these technologies, then we are by all means not going to be able to compete with any other nation out there. So, if our institutions are not well equipped, the impact is a very simple one, really. Half-baked professionals. No, I would not call them professionals. Half-baked students. So you're going to have a lawyer that cannot argue in court. You're going to have an engineer that cannot construct a road. I think which is why we still use China companies. You're going to have even teachers who cannot make children understand a simple concept, which is why the country is still lagging behind. So that begs the question of where are we falling short? It takes me back to the earlier argument still, budgetary concepts. If, as a country, we still feel the biggest amount of money off of the GDP we can apportion to education is a feeble 2.8, then there is nowhere we're going to move. So if we continue in this manner, letting schools, letting students hose rot, letting seed schools have no teachers, because I think the ratio, the student to teacher ratio, or the teacher to student ratio is supposed to be 1 to 40. But if you look at public institutions, now this I speak in the context of primary, it is a little over 1 to 80. In some classes, 1 to 100. How does a teacher make all those people understand, bearing in mind that these are children, toddlers? One, they have a very short attention span, which means for them to pay as much attention and pick the concept as lightly as possible, they should have much closer interactions with teachers. We have teachers that do not feel the need to attend very many lectures, so teacher absenteeism is another, and you cannot blame them honestly, because the profession has not been made to look attractive. You are a teacher, you have gone to Kyambogo University, paid about 1.5 every single semester, only to come to a job where you're going to be given 300,000. Would you continue to teach? No, of course not. I mean, you may come by every once in a while, simply because that is a means to an end, but not because you want to make the best of the job, no. The reason as to why there is a very steep decline in public schools is because of the existence of private ones. If you look at the rate at which private schools perform, say for example there is a Seta High somewhere, there is Mark somewhere, there is Chitende somewhere, someone would think, you know what, Uganda has quality education. Schools are scoring 100% Division 1s, But again, look at the tuition that those guys pay. Chitende, you might find is a little over 2 million, the same with SETA, the same maybe with SMAC. And this is not the kind of education the poor can receive. Statistics are that enrollment in public schools is at least 40%, whereas in private schools, it's just 19%. So the people we are educating to make them professionals are just a very small population of the country.
Thank you so much. Piloya, you know, he talks about the private and government institutions, and what he says, what they pay is different, what they study is different, what they come out with is different, therefore, and what we create, therefore, for the future is different. That's a divide in the population. We are creating classes. Even when they all complete university, they will not be the same. What does this mean for the country?
Well, just to pick up from where I stopped, you know, education is a fundamental right. That you are born and you are supposed to be educated. It's available for everybody, where I come from, where and all that. And when you look into it's actually the Sustainable Development Goals, which is meant to develop all these other countries, including Uganda. Uganda subscribes to the SDG, meaning that we are looking at how best can we improve on our education, which is a baseline for our development as a country, which is actually going to provide us the labor and all that we need to develop economically and actually raise the GDP and all that. But the question then comes to, I'll take you back to right to the stage of the primary enrollment. And I'll give you one example of a primary school that topped the country. It's actually been my primary school, El Shaddai. Now, one thing I've realized different, quite different, because I did attend a UPE, and then I went to the private. And that was just because of the performance of this school. And over time, from the time they started, they've ranked, like they've been performing very well. And parents have lost morale in the UPE schools, and every other person is fighting. How can I get a space at that particular school? The question is the effort put. The other day, the director was saying how the parents and child engagement does matter as well at this very level, at these initials. Does that happen in the UPE? The teacher-parent engagement, it's equally important. I'll set a target for this kid, I'll continue following, I'll know what I'm supposed to do, but also, you know, I'll understand the baseline. How does this kid understand? But again, what is my motivation? Just like my colleague said.
You see, Piloya, what you ask is to a peasant farmer in down Masaka, Nakapiripirit, Nakasongola, Kitgum.
I'm getting there.
A parent that did not go to school for a single day to come and do this kind of assessment, mind you, he or she is taking their daughter, their son, to a UPE school that certainly does not have a laboratory, certainly does not have computers, certainly has 2-3 teachers. Is she able to do this assessment?
I'm getting there. I'm still telling you we are at initials where the school has been established. Remember, I'll take you a little to the manifesto of NRM that talks about schools to be established in sub-counties, parishes, in districts, and you know.
A seed school per
yes,
parish,
seed school,
a primary
parish,
school per
yes,
village,
yes.
something like that.
So, in the goals, in the SDG goal, we are looking at education accessible. How do we make it accessible to everybody? Let the schools be established. The question is, have the schools been established? Number one. Equitable. We're looking at it being equitable, right, to every other person. After it making it accessible, let everybody be inclusive, including the girl child that we talked about. But is every other person playing their roles? Are the teachers playing their roles? Yes, we talk about, you know, we talk about the teachers losing the morale because probably they also have their basic needs that probably the salary cannot sustain. So you find a teacher in the village is just going to, you know, run around with a border, right? Because to him, I need something extra to also take my kid to school. And these kids and these teachers are not taking their kids to the primary school. They will take it to a private school. Well, that is the baseline for the primary. Let's look at the curriculum itself. Yeah. I mean, I am a lawyer, but I'll tell you the teachers would tell you that whatever you're studying now may not be what you'll find there. What is that you're telling me? In other words, you're telling me this that I'm studying is not what I'm going to have in the field. So why am I studying it? Why don't you bring the reality to where I am? Of recent, great thanks to the First Lady for revising the O-level curriculum, but it still leaves a bit of question.
Did she revise it?
They sort of, they made some, yeah, they did. That now, now.
I mean the person of the First Lady.
Not the person, I mean the ministry. And great thanks to our office. Yeah? Did you get it?
Yes, I did.
Office for going that mile because the curriculum has been revised at O level. But it still raises a question or bridges the gap of, yes, the O level has been revised. The primary are still using the old curriculum. O level, you come to O level, senior 1 to senior 4, things are different. You're going to A level, the same thing. You go into the university, nothing has been done about it. So what is that? So after finishing my probably, I've been ushered into the world of how things are supposed to be. I'm still getting back to the wayward, how things are being done. So,
you see, the crisis you talk about is that a student is facing a new curriculum at O level,
yes.
goes back to old at A level, goes to the university, trains to become a teacher, come to train other students on
Yes.
something he's not aware of.
Yeah. You get back and then you've been told this, and probably maybe they'll think again and revise this one. So if the curriculum is revised again, you probably do not even know where to start from.
Thank you. I want to engage Mwebesa on that one. You see, it's quite a state of confusion. If you do not match these steps, new, old, new, teachers trained at a certain level, at another level they are not trained, we do not have the resources. I don't know, maybe we take the debate to who should be actually in charge of this education. We have government. We know that in many of the developed nations, it is government in charge of education. Education is free. Citizens are taxed and government provides the education. Should we trust our government to entirely take over the education sector, own all the schools or the universities, tax us and give us free, quality, transparent, fit for purpose education? Should we take that bet?
You know, the concept of fit for purpose may make me and you not talk after this interview. Because I'm not going personal, but I'm just trying to paint an image of how dark it can be.
Please, feel free.
Because, for example, in my profession, they said we are adopting a concept of fit for purpose. And as professionals, we said yes, because 1.8% of our land is surveyed, 18% in total. It's really bad. So now when I bring it down to saying, okay, let the government tax us and give us fit for purpose education, I'm one of the citizens who have lost confidence in this country when it comes to handling tax.
Say that again.
I am one of the citizens who have lost confidence and trust in this country when it comes to handling tax. I don't know about other panelists, but I don't think now taxing a Ugandan can't be a reason, for example, for them to say now, give us the education. I think this country must now accept that we need to outsource. This government, for example, in the coffee line, set up industries and people bid and run them on behalf of the government, and they're in a steady state. I would, of course, recommend this government to allow private individuals to be service providers of education. And you see whether this education sector won't go up. Because we've seen that private individuals are running private institutions way better than the public institutions are performing. I have not said they should give them out, but I've said they should run them on behalf of the government of Uganda. Because the government of Uganda for so long is still struggling with running at a pace the private individuals are running. And you imagine, if I'm running a profit-oriented organization, but I'm still doing better than a non-profit oriented organization, what would you recommend your neighbor? To definitely run it like myself, who is running a profit-oriented. If, for example, when you're signing a contract for running an industry on behalf of government, the terms and conditions are clear. It should benefit the community. So whatever you do, you must have that at the back of your mind. So I would definitely add my voice to those that would believe in mine, that this government can adopt a mechanism where people will bid and be education service providers on behalf of the state, supervised by the state, and the state can facilitate these individuals and keep them in check.
In brief, are you trying to say government schools at primary, at secondary, tertiary should leave the hands of government directly, be taken to individuals, run them, expect a profit, and return to government?
Not expect a profit. I think I should package it better. The concept isn't expecting a profit. The concept is, you see, for example, how much government spends on administration itself is a question. Look at the structures of the education. For example, for primary, we have an inspector, we pay them at the district. We have a DEO, we pay them at the district. I went through primary, and I can tell you, I had never seen a DEO come to our school. I would, of course, write his name in an SST paper. Who is the DEO of your district? We had John Tererao. I wrote. He went. They built another one. But the gentleman had never physically reached the school. But these people run budgets of community outreach, community engagement, and the government funds them. You get my point? What if now they adopted a service provider who keeps these schools in check per district? That in Gulu we have Lokii, and the schools in Gulu are run by Lokii. We know who to keep in check. But in Gulu, they have a service commission of education which sits to appoint and give jobs to people after it has received something. You get it? And at the end of the day, it does not keep in check those in schools. I think this government needs to go a little bit more political when it comes to handling primary education, especially at district level. Why? We have growing numbers of ghost teachers. No one talks about it. We have growing numbers of officials who fill titles but not offices and responsibilities, still in the primary context. And no one seems to talk about it. The government is losing out on handling primary education. Specifically, let's not talk about tertiary because it's a very big thing. Let's not talk about secondary. But look at the primary context. If we, for example, outsourced service providers, for example, for education itself, sit in that district and see which people have these private institutions and they're running and sound. Just keep them in check. take off this DEO whatever setting and say we shall facilitate you given the budget that has been around, be the ones we are sourcing from. I can tell you they will rise this thing. Because at the end of the day, the contract says in 1 year we shall assess you. And when they assess you and you're not doing well, we shall take you out and bring in people. Not these things of a district that will say we have no first grade. As a district, it is sorry, and the DEO keeps the job.
Reagan, this country has a history of public-private partnerships.
Yes.
And the most recent ones I can give, maybe about 2, is in the hospitality industry. Government has a partnership with investor Sudhir Ruparelia in what is called the Commonwealth Resort in Munyonyo. Government too has a partnership with Rocco Construction Company in this country. Unfortunately, records have continued to show that these partners have actually never remitted anything to the coffers of government, in spite of us having shares in those companies.
I think in the context of education, it would be different. At the University of Dar es Salaam sits one of the biggest PPPs. The University of Dar es Salaam receives 34% of its funding from a building that it leased land to a private person. He developed the land and provides services. The building has canteens, everything a student would need is in the building. So if we as a government, for example, because I do think I'm part of the government by the virtue of being a tax-paying citizen, if we as a government really want functional public-private partnerships, then we should clearly define the terms and conditions. And we should be intentional. You see, the thing of telling citizens that they don't remit, I even have a feeling they remit but to a certain office that Ugandans don't know. You get it? But if this government got intentional, those people would remit, because in terms and conditions of that PPP, remitting is one of them. So why would you certify finishing by the stipulated time, putting up a structure that is as good as we want, but fail to pay? You get it? They need to be intentional.
Thank you so much for those views. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. The Inter-University Debates takes a very short break and we shall be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
You are still on Uganda's leading freedom platform, the Civic Space TV, and this is the Inter-University Debates. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, the conversation is around the education sector. We are talking the status of education in this country and special focus on dropouts from our institutions, primary, secondary, tertiary. It is worrisome now. Ladies and gentlemen, where we left off, the conversation was drawing to a couple of challenges in the education sector, but I want to point out one that actually made me worried. While releasing results, primary leaving examinations, the Minister of Education the Honorable Janet Kataha Museveni did say, very many young Ugandans do not go to school. She did also say, very many young Ugandans go to school, but at a certain stage, they drop out. But what caught my attention was the fact that there are over a million Ugandans who report to school, and at completion of P7, government cannot trace these people. The word is trace these people. And what comes to my mind in that regard is when I go to a primary school or to nursery to register as a student, they take my details. They take the details of my parents or whoever brings me to school, including education, including contacts. And certainly many students are at schools that are near their villages where they stay. For a minister to come out and say, 1 million Ugandans cannot be traced in the system. 1 million Ugandans. What does that say about this government in terms of record keeping, in terms of concern, in terms of responsibility? Look.
Thank you very much, Philip. Very sensitive. I risk being labeled prisoners, but nonetheless, let's I think, delve into the discussion. Now, when the minister spoke about the 1 million students that could not be traced, I saw very many people commenting with so much concern, as though they thought students dropped out in P6. No, that is not entirely accurate. The 1 million is a cumulative number that is taken from individuals that joined maybe in P1, those that joined in P2, and every step of the way. Now, for those 7 years, surely there is a number of reasons as to why people should or could drop out. But also, sometimes they can just change environment. Someone is in P4, P5, parents relocate to maybe another country, and they just go like that. So the 1 million, I don't want to presume, have all simply dropped out. It could be a different circumstance. But to say that they cannot be traced shows a very huge lack of responsibility. The question is on whom or to whom. Every single institution, like the functionality of local governments to report to the central government, has an entire leadership hierarchy. There can be a principal, there can be a headmaster, there can be a deputy dean, there can be there is an entire leadership structure in every single school, well, at least for the well-to-do schools. Each of those schools has in place a way that they can monitor students. When a student is expelled, it is listed in the systems. When a student leaves, it is listed in the system. The question of if the government is able to maintain records or not is a hard one to answer when you consider all these different factors. But largely, I would say the government is also a little complacent. They are overly satisfied with what they have yet achieved, which is why there are very, very many looming issues. Statistics show that over 50% of students that drop out of school drop out because of education-related costs. That even in UPE schools, people still drop out because there are things they cannot afford. I remember at a time last year, I met a very young girl selling maize on the streets of Gulu. And we asked, I was with colleagues, we asked her why she was not in school, and she said she did not have books. Now, people drop out of school for reasons as trivial as inability to get books. And for girls, it becomes a bit complex when they're in periods and they cannot afford menstrual towels. All these are reasons that make people drop out. But even then, I think the government has done little, nothing to ensure that individuals do not drop out at this extent. So largely, yes, I would agree with you. Our government has been very, very complacent when it comes to record keeping and when it comes to a follow-up on the education, especially in UPE schools and maybe USE.
Thank you so much. Piloya, highly anticipated to say something. You see, when we talk records and we talk government, there are cases we have national IDs as a country. But when a citizen goes to a government facility for something, they still require you to give your details. There are cases with national IDs as a country. They still ask. But when a citizen goes to a government facility for something, with the national ID, they still require you to give your details. In other words, the national database. With the national ID. Here we have students. They still ask. Give us your names, your parents, where you stay, with the national ID. Not recorded. In other words, the national database. We can't find it. Here we have students, pupils. A country that is who are not recorded. Supposed to provide social services. Not recorded. The government that is supposed to budget and say we have 1,000 people in school A and they need water. Supposed to provide social services. Near that school, they need help. A government that is supposed to budget and say we have 1,000 people in school A and they need water, they need a good road near that school, they need a health facility in that school. Government is not aware where these people are. Where does it leave the lives of these young people, especially for the future?
Oh, it's quite absurd. That is the state of affairs where we're in. And that, just like my colleague has said, I'll add on his words, there are a number of things that really does matter, including if you have to plan for something, then you have to know what you're planning for. But if what you're planning for is non-existent, or you can't trace it, or you can't even know where it is, then it becomes a challenge. In any case, it then poses a question of where do they get the statistics from, right? If we are able to get statistics of people who are missing, and yet we can't trace such individuals, then it brings a question of the accuracy of a number of things that are being done. Like, yes, we have to plan for them, and probably, let's say, we are saying that we need to interact with these individuals and ask them probably, why are they dropping out of school, as my colleague said, or what are their area of interests? Does the education system fit them? Why are we in school for so long, right? I'll ask you, how many years have you spent in school?
23.
But do you feel an accomplished person?
No.
Do you see it coming very near? Like you're in the stage where you can compete with those who, absolutely, those are questions that are raised, right? But it also comes with tracing the people, understanding the nature of, let's say, the country that we are in. These are kids who are right at the primary level. The parents are ushering them to, you need to dig before you go to school. At school, probably they expect you to put on shoes, but even you're digging, the proceeds of your parents, a lot of things does happen in the middle.
Piloya, could it be a failure of supervision systems? I remember as a very young child in the village, when a child spent 2 days without coming to school, someone from the school, maybe a teacher, maybe the inspector, would pass by the home to find out why this child is not coming to school. What happened to that system?
And that is why there are equally even bylaws that could be set. Besides the inspectors, the DEOs and the likes, what are the roles of the leaders at the district, right? To ensure that this is taken aboard. I'll give you an example of our sub-county speaker. So happens that, fortunately, someone who has stepped in school and he understands the value of education. Sometimes kids are chased out of school because of school fees, right? You send this very young kid out of school, the parent is unbothered somehow, and this kid is not going to get back to school again. So it sits and says, no school should send away these kids out of school. Send a notice at least.
This parent is bothered. It's the circumstances.
Right. We are saying, yes, the parent is bothered over the tuition, but we are saving the first thing first here. Right? We're looking at this kid dropping out of school. But one of the reasons are countless times this kid is being sent out of school, tuition, school fees, this and that. Sometimes they even, get challenges along the way. The adolescents, after you send them out of school, they're looking at whoever will come to their rescue. Right? Others even get to drop out of school, just like that. Right? So what I'm saying is, the bottom line is the records being kept. Just like my colleague said, how many have dropped out of school because of ABCD? Then how do we mitigate the challenges that are here? But again, asking the questions of, do we need to? Because interest really does matter. I was asked when I was young, what do you want to be? I said two things. I want to either be a doctor or a lawyer. But the doctor was first, right? You'll ask me what happened. I dropped math in P4. Why did I? Yes. I mean, it is like a course that for you to do a combination, like PCB, you're going to struggle it with. Did you get it? Mm-hmm. So I dropped it, and then that was the beginning of the initials of losing the interest and sort of. But anyway, I dropped it. That's a topic for another day. Just because that the teacher who was teaching us was tall, huge, and I felt he had content. And then in a minute, they're bringing me someone who is tiny and short. And I'm like, oh, no way, this one can't be my teacher. Now, do you get it? Now, as time passes by, I find myself being a lawyer that I am. But many wanted to be pilots. But how is that practical? Right? The duration. Now, assuming, right at that initial stage, they asked me, and I said I wanted to be a doctor. And I am trained and groomed in that regard. Do you see? Right now, I am a lawyer, yes. Lawyers are supposed to be diverse, you're supposed to know this, ABCD and all that. But can I know it when I'm now pursuing it? Do I need to be graded again at some point, whether I qualify? Do you see that it makes me at some point lose interest or even phase out from the field itself? So there is a lot that has to be done. And this, I think, goes back still to the records that are being kept to understand. How many are dropping out because they lack the necessities?
Does this government have the will to make sure it has the records of Ugandans? Because again, I'll give you an example. Recently we had opposition members of parliament a couple of months ago striking, boycotting sitting, asking government to produce people they claim had been abducted by government and are somewhere in the prison cells of government, but they are not produced. Government came out with a response from the list that had been provided by the opposition, to be specific, the National Unity Platform. Government accounted for about 3/4 of the number that had been provided. And it did say it was not aware, it did not even know the other people that were on that list. That's worrisome.
Well, the question is then, where are these people?
Yes. And government that is mandated to know where every Ugandan is, it has the resources. You have institutions that take data of Ugandans in schools, in churches. You go to a hospital, government should have this information. I mean, if they are able to get information of ADF terrorists in forests in DR Congo, why wouldn't they know where Piloya, who has gone to school, who has been a resident of St. Tinda for the last 10 years is? What's the quality of that government?
Well, as to the qualities, it's debatable, but it raises a number of questions, but I'll just pick one particular one. The question of interests and where we are headed. If I've locked you in the house and I can't tell the near neighbor where you are, then it means my interests are just not, I just have interests that are very, I don't know how to put it, but I want to do something evil, probably. Just probably do away with you and without the trace of evidence or something of that sort. That is an analogy of if I've locked you in a house. So it raises still those questions. If this is a government, we understand the security does have a role to play. We understand that different sectors that do have roles and responsibilities, and So if someone is missing, even in a locality, even look at even up to the LC1. An LC1 knows who lives in that area or not, and they will know that you came here this day, this minute. So if they can't trace it even at that big level, then really it's just worrisome.
Thank you.
But I just hope something is done about it.
Thank you. Mwebesa, I want to get to you. You see, government is technically a group of people given authority and mandate to run the affairs of a state. And that state includes citizens. That government is given resources by its citizens to deliver these services. When we go to schools and students are not there, when students go to schools and there are no teachers, when you go to hospitals and there's no medicine, there's no doctor, or the doctor is there but is complaining he has not been paid, the lecturer is striking, there has to be someone to blame. There sure has to be someone to blame. Who do we blame for the mess we see as a country?
First of all, me and you are to blame to start with. Because if we sit and watch the system of governance die, but we still have very many young people who are saying we are comfortable, please don't get off the main. And they do not say, please stay on the main and add ABC, we are to blame. Then, of course, in Chigezi, they say when a fish is to rot, it starts from the head. So, by all means, we will not hesitate saying whoever is in charge of whichever department, especially where systems are dead, is to account. There are gentlemen in this country that are doing well. I want to tell you that not everything in this country is a mess. No. We are excelling with policing, we are excelling with military, UPDF. There are some sectors where we are excelling. And I also don't believe in the leadership status of criticizing those in power as though those that will come can do any different. The question is, if something is a mess, for example, from the financial aspect, then who do we have in position to address what is a mess? Now, if you find a doctor in a hospital saying he has not been paid, but a member of parliament who finished senior 6 has been paid in time. When you find my part-time lecturer, for example, with a PhD at Kyambogo, has not been paid from August, but the office of the speaker has recently received an increment of funds they will receive shortly, then that means the system needs to be ironed. Then that means that the people who sit in there to appropriate funds themselves need to be polished. I hope you get my argument.
I do.
Something is a mess, but we have solutions around what is a mess. That appropriation, for example, is what is affecting payments. They don't say that people have not been paid because Ugandans have not paid taxes. That means Ugandans are not to blame. Because the Ugandans themselves are saying you people are overtaxing us. And it's true. You pay a tax at a border for your raw material. You pay a tax in the industry for the finished product. Me, a consumer at a shop, I am paying a tax 18% on VAT. Then you're saying, please put if miss. We have agreed, and because we don't have the power and we are not the implementers, we succumb to your pressure. We have given you whatever that you have asked us as citizens. You as the people in appropriation are the ones that are supposed to sit down and break it down. Why should we have an office with 2 billion as donation? You get it? When 2 billion can clear lecturers in Kyambogo University and reduce arrears. I think as a country we need to agree that if, for example, a speaker of a country in Singapore has money to donate, as Uganda, we depend on donations. We are not yet as gifted up to an extent where we should also donate. I'm wondering what our donors even think when you find that the ones you donate to are donating themselves, and you wonder. The system of appropriation needs to be aligned. Appropriation should be done such that the funds available and the system of appropriation should conform to the need at the current point. If, for example, as a country we are addressing, for example, dropout of students, I even have a feeling some of them drop out and become mechanics. Others drop out and they become drivers, like I had earlier said. But this system of appropriation needs to be aligned with the need of the community. If it was then, and if it is today, and even in days to come, then I'm very sure the education system will come up. Because the status is it needs to be prioritized, and if the appropriation system prioritizes it, then we could even go beyond 4% of the GDP.
You know, I worry about the survival of us as Ugandans. A few days ago, there was a story in the Monitor newspaper that said 70% of Ugandans survive on taking loans. There was another story earlier where Bank of Uganda gave statistics that indicated only 1% of Ugandans earn £1 million shillings, and the average earning of Ugandans is 150,000. When you look at those statistics, and if 150 is an average, that means you have a very big percentage that is below that amount. A month, 30 days. Look at these people, and they have to take their children to school. They have to take their children to hospitals. They have to buy a mobile phone. They have to dress. They have to eat. They have to feed their families. When you take this to the side of government, and you mentioned it, there is an office that has a budget for donation. There is an office that has a budget of 40 billion shillings just for parties. One item, parties, 40 billion shillings in this country. Priorities of government. Is it intended for government to miss its priorities in terms of focusing on the interest of the citizen?
The question of the intention would beg the question of who makes the decisions. Now, today as a country, we have a very big parliament of about 570 MPs, 570. 570 of whom at least 2/3 are just salary earners and not policymakers or representatives of their different districts. So if you have a very big number to that extent, and only about 100 of them are doing what they're supposed to do, that would you start to question our expenditures now. Every single MP, when they are just voted, is given about 200 million shillings to purchase a car. Today, there is another issue, gratuity fund, giving people money because they have held an office, and we're speaking big amounts of money, 500 million, 400 million, 400 million for a very small committee, for individuals. But where does all this money come from? You see, I remember someone once saying that government as an institution does not have money. The money they utilize is the money of the people. Taxes from people who toil day and night to be able to put some food on their tables. So I think the most important question should be the utilization of this hard-earned money of the citizens of the country. You cannot have an MP who simply wakes up, drives to Parliament, sleeps a little for the session, goes back home, and the person is earning 30 million shillings. Then there is a one Phillip Muliisa who wakes up very early in the morning, goes, does a little bit of work, comes, moderates a little, and you still tax them. Then the one that gets 30 million shillings is not taxed whatsoever.
You know, recently you remind me of a debate in the House that was about now the desire of especially female legislators, no, all of them. They're asking for an in-house salon such that they don't have to go to these outside salons that are expensive to do their faces and hair and nails. And it was a serious debate, and indeed they will get it on the floor of Parliament. But also, the budget of Parliament, of course, after an earlier comment by Ramadan to reduce it, has actually been increased.
Yes.
The budget of State House has been increased. The budget of Office of the President has also been increased. If I pick out one official, for example, in Parliament, the government chief whip, on his budget, he has 800 million shillings for donations. The government chief whip. The speaker has a budget for donations. The president has a budget for donations in hundreds of billions. Little mathematics shows that when you do divisions from the budget of Parliament on a daily basis, Parliament of Uganda spends 2.8 billion shillings. 2.8. That is less than the budget of most of the districts in this country. Less than the budget of districts.
Yes.
There was a debate during where the budgeting process is undergoing. Malago Hospital is indebted on water to the tune of, if I recall the figure, 14 billion shillings. And the permanent secretary to the Ministry of Health says government should turn now to create boreholes at Malago Hospital such that instead of paying national water, they just get to their boreholes. You have a patient in the theater, you rush to the borehole, you pick water, rush to the theater. Such a situation. Piloya, what should Ugandans brace for the future?
I'm quite saddened by the fact that this is a situation that Ugandans find themselves in. And it's quite demoralizing that even those who are supposed to stand in for Ugandans are prioritizing something else, beauty. I mean, I don't know if they go to their constituency and say, I'll go and look more beautiful so that you elect me next time, or I'm going to make sure that health issues are prioritized.
Please forgive me for interrupting on that one.
Yeah.
I really want to understand these subjects really well. And yes, I do go trim my hair and so on. But let's talk, say, makeup and making hair for the ladies. Is this such an expensive venture that a person who earns over 30 million shillings, a person who gets allowances, 10 million to visit the constituency, 1 point something per sitting, cannot afford to do their makeup and hair?
And it's not like it's a makeup that's they're going to do it for a party or something, or they're going to show counterparts. Now that brings about, it informs our understanding on what does take place in the parliament. Because if I am prioritizing my looking beautiful, yet the context and the most important thing I'm doing in the house is debating policies that affect the people, then that means I've deviated from the major thing that I'm supposed to do in that parliament. Just to get back to what you've said. I mean, I don't even know where to start from. Because
what does
I think
it
I
even
don't
say about the MPs themselves?
I don't remember the last time I played it. It's not that it's something women are not supposed to do, but I mean I chose it. So every other person can choose what they want for themselves. And even when I did the natural hair. Like I plaited my natural hair. I mean, still you can choose what you want. But again, it's the question of spending that little time, that little amount of money to make your hair. I think it doesn't require. I mean, it's making me ask more questions of what time are they going to get for the saloon? Like, so are they going to be coming from wherever they are, or probably from the constituency or wherever, to come to the saloon in parliament?
Yeah, you come to
do
the salon, rush to the city. And you
And-
see, what makes that debate more fragile is the fact that, for example, a member of parliament and so a minister and so on is given a car. That car is fueled. He has a personal assistant, I think about 2, has an office, has health insurance, is given a tablet by government, all these by government, including airtime to these members of parliament. What is the return on investment from these people?
And then someone is having donations. I mean, I'm in
Thank
position
you.
to give. But let me
Please.
let me add in. I think we all have a role to play, just before we actually go back to that. Who is that? You know, sometimes it even goes back to the voters themselves, but they don't know what to do, and that's why sometimes they're frustrated because of the nature of the state they find themselves in. You need money, I mean this and that. Someone is willing to give it, so take this person. This person is prioritizing because I know at the end of the day, I have this that I'm supposed to give you. Anyways, I'll further the discussion as you. But we have a role to play.
Thank you. Mwebesa, we can talk the challenges. We could take a week discussing just challenges, but at some point we must create solutions, because we need to see solutions for this country. When you look at all these, first of all, like she mentioned, the citizens do not know what to do anymore. And maybe we look through the education. Does it empower the citizens to know what to do at such a point? And 2, what other avenues can we undertake as citizens to make sure this country is governed better? where there are loopholes, why it is good we improve it, such that we have a better future for the country called Uganda?
Very important question. First repeat the first one.
Yeah, talking about what she mentioned of Ugandans not knowing what to do anymore. Does the education answer that? The education we get, does it teach us on what to do at such a spot where we are confused?
No, absolutely not. And I think it would be a threat to the government if the education was giving us a perfect solution for wrongs. One of the ways of governing a society for long or for a short time and you run is misinformation. You either misinform them or you deny them the information. In the context of Uganda, the government keeps the information away from us. And even those that want to take over government misinform us. So now that's where I really want to tell you that Ugandans have wrong information, while others have no information. So the best thing that we as Ugandans think forward, if education, for example, would address an issue of information, if students faced more of the current affairs than the previous affairs, where in history, for example, myself, who studied history some 10 years ago, was taught West African history. You get it? And I'm very well versed with Mansa Musa, Sundiata Keita, people who may never matter to myself. And I was hardly given the history of the people like Julius Nyerere, whose ideologies governed countries from zero to something. We need to modify. How I wish, unfortunately, I've not gone through a new curriculum, but I wish that there is a polishing in that system such that it fits the situation in the country. Secondly, like you asked, what mechanisms can we adopt as Ugandans? First and foremost, I think Ugandans, we need to be serious. We are not serious. I don't know whether you guys are serious, but we are not serious.
Maybe they could tell us.
They will answer when their chance comes. But you imagine where this government has realized that for us as a country, we are very enjoyment prone. A bottle of beer has been static at its price from like 2012. We can still get it at 3, 5, 4, 5, 5,000 maximum in classic places, 7,000 at most. You get it? Fuel is exponentially going up. No one is worried. We are not worried. After all, majority of us, we are drinking. We are not sober. You get it? So as a country, we need to step up. For example, the opposition of this country needs to step up. Where you find the mechanism of taking over leadership is exposing. It's a very big joke. You cannot substitute a government that has policies without discussing those policies by exposing. It doesn't make logical sense. And I think Ugandans should wake up. Secondly, as a country and as a nation, we all must accept that we are not going to rely on this government. We need to adopt the ideology and mentality of this government will depend on us. Because when I have an ideology of the government will depend on me, I will fend to first have something for myself, employ those around me who don't have something, and in so doing, the government will benefit when we are consumers of what it has to give. As I wind up on what can be done, I so much advocate for the bottom top approach, not the top-bottom approach, where you find that stakeholders who are citizens are not involved in lawmaking, are not involved in policy making. Even these statistics that come out, I doubt they are credible, because I, for one, have not participated in any survey. I don't know whether anyone in this room has participated in one of these surveys that bring us this information, where they say 78% of us are mentally unstable. I have not participated in it to see if I am part of that 78 or the 22 that is surviving.
They've done it for
yes, you. I don't know who does. Maybe AI does. But
you know, the question of surveys, unfortunately, there are always samples, and the figures are now coordinated through the samples and summing up and getting averages and drawing percentages in relation to the samples taken.
See, sampling, my brother, sampling has limitations. You see, we have types of sampling. We have purposive, where you just go to a certain group where you're sure. For example, if I'm looking for drunkards, I know hotspots. You get it? I know I will pick them from wherever, and I know. So if I go to for example, when I'm doing a survey of drug abuse, and I go deep in Kamocha, you're sure I will get 100%, and I will declare statistically that 100% of Ugandans use drugs. And I will statistically be right because of the random sample I've made in a hotspot. You get it? I think we need to step up as a country, especially with the issue of top to bottom, and now reverse it to bottom to top. Involve Ugandans in decision making, and in so doing we shall not have things like vandalism, where you find a road is here and the locals have taken the road signs. You drive 100 kilometers, no road sign, and it is scrap somewhere in someone's store. You get it? If we were involving Ugandans from the bottom, such that by the time the government is to implement something, for example, from the crafting and conceptualization of parish development, if Ugandans were first engaged to give ideas, and this now came from up as an initiative government has chosen to fund, they wouldn't even be struggling going on shows of musicians, please enjoy parish development. Wherever they go, they are telling us, please enjoy something that they crafted and we hardly know of. Lastly, what can we do as a country to see how best to move forward? Mindset change. If you go to 10 students at a university, I'm talking as a guild president who has, I think, in all the recently concluded elections, had the biggest number of votes. When you go to MUBS, all of the 3 candidates, I can sum up their votes and they don't still make what I got in Kyambogo. Same as Makerere, I may sum up the first 4 or 5 of them. I had 3,040 votes. That means that in a random sample, I have really engaged a very good number of youth in this country. We need, as a country, to focus on mindset change. Because when you go to campus today and meet 10 students and ask them, guys, what are you studying to be? The guy will simply tell you, I want to get an office and milk this country. That the day will get, there is actually a student who told me that the day I can become a president, I will call a general meeting of this country where every Ugandan should come and I will take attendance. We will sell this country and share the money and go. So that means that even the breed that is coming is more deadly than the ones we are saying, please go away. If at all we don't change these minds, we are doomed. And that is something that the government needs to take seriously. I'm seeing a group saying they're teaching patriotism, but patriotism isn't something that you can teach in a social event. It is something that should be cracked down as far as my lecture room, as far as a primary school student, because I heard of patriotism in secondary. Unfortunately, in senior 2, we got a certain colonel from UPDF. He came, we clapped as scouts, Zavarians, and somehow it looked like rocket science by then. But there is need because, for example, in countries, you watch football, when they beat Uganda, for us as Ugandans, when they beat Uganda, we say, we are used. Those ones, after all, they even play at home in Ghana. But you will watch a match of Portugal where they will beat Portugal and the child will cry. He is crying, his mother is crying, the father is... That is the spirit.
You know, what you say is critically important, and I normally relate this to national anthems. In my country, I've been to a couple of places, and I try to source information. You go to countries, our national anthem, we play it when we have visitors. I have seen countries, check something about the United States. Radio shows starting, they play the national anthem. Television shows, is it a musical concert? People are proud of listening to what defines them as a country. And when you listen to this anthem, for example, that so-called Star-Spangled Banner of the United States, the second stanza, you listen to what they say. They are jubilating about having bombs thrown in the air and intimidating the hell out of everybody. But they are proud of it. But this beautiful country, the fertile soils that grow the food, the weather and the environment, we barely play it. We barely listen to it.
We only sing the first stanza.
Yes.
You see, a country, you will watch a country, for example, Tanzanians. These guys sing their anthem and cry.
Exactly.
And they sing it from dot to dot.
I've seen South
We've
Africans.
been to African competitions, debate competitions, and these guys have utmost patriotism. They will be playing the Ugandan one, and you will hear Ugandans at "Oh Uganda," and on the last word.
Yes.
Second stanza, we shall gamble, and the third stanza, we may explain. That is how it happens. We need to craft these kids from kindergarten when they love this country. And in so doing, you see, when you bend a stick, when it's dry, you will just break it. It's ductile, it's brittle, whatever physics can say. But when you craft them from kindergarten and they grow up with this mentality, I am very sure you will not have Ugandans who defame and talk ill of this country if you nurture them.
Thank you so much. Who discovered the source of River Nile?
Ugandans.
Thank you. So,
The
what I
first man
wanted
to see.
what I pick from that is, you know, we talk about these things. I was taught John speak. People that came before me were taught John speak. I will have a child that will be taught John speak. I'll have a child that is taught that we have Lake Victoria, not Nalu Valley. There will be a child, even today, that is being taught about Henry Merton Stanley and his role in having Mount Rwenzori. I will be taught how the first trader in this country was some guy from outside of here. The things we study and what we are told, I'm talking about what inspires people to do, to love their countries, to have interest. How many times in a classroom is a Ugandan student explained to the role and significance of having Lake Nalu Valley in this country and how beneficial it can be to the economy? River Nile, the longest river in the world, John speak. How many Ugandans at primary level, at secondary level, are taught the significance of River Nile and the billions of dollars it can generate for this country through tourism, through fishing, through irrigation? Countries like Egypt. Egypt makes $5 billion from the only portion of River Nile they have in tourism, $5 billion. Uganda boasts of making $1 billion annually in all the tourism things we have in this country. And we are comfortable, and government says, oh, tourism has grown. I was looking at the figures. In the previous year, We got 73,000 tourists, 73, from USA, Asia, Europe combined, 73. A country like Kenya, from one national park, Masai Mara, they got 400,000 people from the same locations. 400,000 for one national park. We got 73,000 from all that we have. And there is nothing better Kenya has than we have but organization. I think this is something to reflect on as a country, and I think we can do it. But I get back to the education we talk about, very important. Piloya,
Yes.
recommendations. How do we correct the things that are not working out in this country?
Well, we are here, and I think that's the first step. Let us speak up of things that are not working, but also ensure that we have solutions for what is workable. Personal development. Let's build ourselves. You can't want to be a better leader, but you're not working towards becoming a better leader. You can't want to have a better country, and you know now the challenges that probably we are being taught history of wherever. I'll give you just an example. When we went for a training at Chankwanzi, and these were university students that were taking actually UNSA, that means a representation of Uganda. And we were asked to draw the map of Uganda. Oh my, it was out of 20. I still remember. And wow, I personally, well, I am patriotic, but I first forgot. I'm like, okay, is the map like this? But at some point I remembered, I'm like, okay, this is the map. So I got 12 out of 20. But there was someone who got 0. Like 0 map of Uganda. He couldn't even draw the frame, the what, and wherever. So the question was, yet if we were asked to draw a map of Ghana or wherever,
Canadian prairies.
We are going to draw them perfectly. What are the challenges those people face? We shall put them forth. So, well, if we know that those are the challenges, the president often says that we are busy drawing, we are busy living like, it says he mentions the Cameroons, and not living like Ugandans. Like in the sense of we don't even know the boundaries. We can protect our states, but the things that are supposed to be the army, okay? In some countries, if you realize the security and all that, everybody is like very fit. They can tax you. I have a professor who was telling me, particular country, they will tax you if you're not physically fit. You have to pay for why you're not fit. Because in case of anything like protecting the country, you're going to be left out. You can't do anything. You're not beneficial. You're just like you're a burden to the country. So let us work upon that, the patriotism and all that. But again, like he said, when the bottom is shaken, the top cannot hold. Let us be firm, do all that we can at necessary steps, but also be responsible. Through that, we'll be in position to become better citizens, but also improve on our country. But most importantly, let us value education. It is the bedrock for our development.
Thank you so much. One of the things that creates leaders, and you did talk about how the people that are coming are thinking about selling this country. And what comes to my mind is role modeling. At any particular stage in life, you have someone who inspires you into something. We have a series of think tanks and associations that are trying to help young leaders grow. What happens is at these events, at these activities, in these places, again we have to invite some people that have had a bit of experience from society. Who do we invite? Our politicians, whose stories we know, whose stories are told, whose stories we witnessed. if I invite, I will not mention any names, but this person, yes, has been a leader for 20 years, but at some point he was corrupt. At some point he misused his force, his office. He's coming to share his experience. Of course, he will not mention the corruption part, but there are things that pull attention, and we're dealing with a generation that has information. What kind of inspiration do we draw from these people? Are they the right examples? How do we as a country, and Lokii, I want you to briefly speak to this. Where do we now get the right kind of role models for our leaders, for our professionals, for our people in the private sector to look at and say, I think if we lead a life like this person, we are taking this country to the next level?
Thank you. I think, one, it is very, very wrong to imagine that every last politician people invite is a role model. No, as a matter of fact, I think most of these politicians are invited because they would be somewhat generous. So what the young people would say is, you know what, I think Minister Piloya Babra will give us a 20 million. Let's invite her to talk about youth involvement. I think the Honorable Mwebesa Reagan can give us 5 million. Let him talk about climate change. We know for sure he knows nothing about climate change. We know she's not a youth, and even when she was not in youth leadership. But we're only looking at what we can gain out of the kind of event we have organized. The country today has run short of politicians. I mean, it has run short of role models. Even these very individuals that we invite, she has been in office for 20 years, he has been there for 30 years. We do not have an assurance that they're in the offices because, one, they are capable, because they are competent, but maybe because of the strategies they used to win elections. It could be that they bought as many people as possible. It could be that they rigged elections. There are very, very many reasons that would that can depart from the primary aspect of competence. So I don't think they are the right people we can look at for the question of mentorship. Now, the other question would be, where then do we look? I think as young individuals that are learned and know where we are going, we cannot fail to find role models. For example, if I want to be a very good lawyer, I cannot fail to find a very outstanding person that has won all their cases. I cannot. If I want to be a businessman, I cannot fail to think of individuals like Sudir who have excelled in the business industry. All I would need is to pick a leaf from what they have been doing to be as successful as they are. So, learned individuals, one way or the other, if they know what they want to achieve, will always have a way of finding the right role models. It's not about people in office.
And in any case, we get these right role models. How do we then balance the issue of moving the values we get from these people vis-a-vis the status quo in the country, the breakdown of values, the immorality? How do we balance that, semblance of keeping the values amidst, you see people are being bought off, you can't survive if you are paying all the taxes because they will cripple you down. I mean, you want to grow your country, you want to have the values, but the values can't help you sustain a life. What do you do?
That is a very interesting question.
I know.
It is. Now, if you talk about an aspect like corruption, say for example, there is one individual that is a traffic officer, and all they do is make sure that in the day they have to work money. That does not mean that everyone is going to do the same thing. The question of integrity. I think as a country, we are supposed to invest in teaching individuals what integrity means and what it would reap when everyone in every single institution is an integral individual. But it defeats the question of teaching individuals what it means to have integrity when the people at the top do not have.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One thing I want us to talk about lastly, and I'll ask you to use a minute to respond to this, the both of you. I'll start with you, Piloya. It's the question of the role of integration at the East African level and the African level, but also other blocks, SADC, COMESA, and so on, in trying to improve the way of doing things on the African continent. These African peoples are either the same or linked almost the same. And I like using the example of, I think it was between 2005 and to 2007. In this country, we had a minister called Aggrey Awori. He was minister of the presidency. And he had his blood brother, Moda Awori. He was the vice president in Kenya. Two brothers, one a minister here and another vice president in Kenya, 2005 to 2007. That talks to the togetherness, to the oneness, to the linkages I'm trying to talk about. How can these help us synergize as African peoples to improve? Because the challenges we talk about in Uganda are not very different from the challenges in Zimbabwe, not so different from the challenges in Sudan. Today we have a bad war. I don't want to use very extreme words. Really a war we do not need in Sudan. We have a war in Chad, we have a war in Libya, we have a war in Niger, in Mali, in Burkina Faso. You can mention the Mozambique down here, the Democratic Republic of Congo, everywhere. How can we leverage on the togetherness, on the linkages, on the connections we have as a people to see that we benefit ourselves and grow ourselves? I'll start with you in a minute.
Just a simple one. I'll borrow it from the words of the former president of Tanzania, when he said that engagements between the presidents back then had reached a certain level. However, when there was not stability at some point, the president sat and said, no, we can't sit with a particular president to discuss this. That brings to our understanding the politics, the political engagements. At what level are we with the other countries? Can Kenya, for example, allow to engage with us, integrate with us? Can Tanzania integrate with us? You realize something common about the two, the common language, as Uganda achieved that. Yes, you give a very good example of the agrees. What mattered was how, the rate of engagement was embedded with the interest, but also the environment itself was accommodative. So we need to, first of all, I think as us, first invest in what we discussed about the patriotism. Understand, love, that if I go to Karamoja, I am okay. That if I went to Rukujiri and I'm posted there, I'll do the right same thing with passion, just as I am in Omoro, without having constructs in my mind that these are not my people. That it calls even for the question of integrity. That I'm given this office, but I know that only qualified. I don't need to ask what is your name. Like, okay, the documents are there. Or where do you come from? What would matter is, can you bring right the values that are expected in that institution? Do you qualify?
Maybe if you allow me, one final one I'll get from you in the interest of time. Why is it such so that Africans find it easier to betray fellow Africans? And I would give a background to that. For example, if I rush down to Burkina Faso, Blaise Compaoré, whom it's so easy to betray Thomas Sankara, with the help, of course, of the Ivorian the name skips my mind, but you can have multitudes of examples at the expense of the blood of Africans in the interest of non-Africans.
On the 2nd of February 1835, Lord Macaulay, the British Parliament, said that I've been to all countries, but there is no such country as Africa, where they're united, they have the spirit of Ubuntu, the oneness. No one is a thief, no one is a beggar. What comes about? How do we now penetrate through? Let's enter their minds, let's enter their hearts, let's enter their spirit. They've done exactly that. Look at our education system. The mind, how does it formulate us? We're studying things that are far away. We know we can survive. I know I can survive with him, but initially, I would know that I can survive without him if I had not learned, taken an extra mile to do more about patriotism. You get? So that is what is in the minds of every Ugandan. Now, briefly, in the spirit, the togetherness, I feel so comfortable probably relating with him because he speaks my language. So anyways, it's just a whole discussion that maybe it's for another day, but just to pick something from it, that we can change this. It starts with loving us. If you love yourself, you love your neighbor that is right seated before you. That if you're supposed to achieve this integration, Uganda should first develop and consolidate. How we consolidate? By loving yourself. Then that means that you're going to work on yourself, be fit, have the knowledge, have the mentality that I can relate with anybody, I can work in Kenya, I can work and be posted anywhere, and we shall achieve the integration.
Thank you so much. The Ivorian president I was looking for is Felix Houphouët-Boigny, and at the interest of Francois Mitterrand of France. Mwebesa.
Yes, sir.
Integration. Briefly, how do we leverage that advantage we have of oneness, of togetherness, of love, of the linked languages, of linked origins, to make sure we support each other as Africans?
When you keenly follow the development of our communities historically, we originate from each other. You will see that the people in southwestern Tanzania originate from South Africa. Myself, I'm from Cameroon. They say Bantu, we are from? So don't call me Ugandan, I'll explain. So our origin is from each other.
Yeah.
We can surely integrate East Africa, Africa, and have one. We just have a problem with what the white man brought, and those are the territorial boundaries. Get my point? So now, I cannot say that, of course, even our presidents themselves may not conform to one another's interests, because maybe what President Museveni wants is not what Odinga or Ruto from Kenya will want. But the only thing that we can see how best to do and have integration is the integration in trade. Take off taxes on the borders, take off these custom taxes. Let's have free trade. If we can achieve the free trade, free transit from place to place, in the long run, we shall have governments conforming to one another because we have the same interest, which is the free trade and transaction from one another. In so doing, we shall have a common currency because we shall be transacting freely with each other. You know, it's so unfortunate when you move with $1 million in Uganda and you're given 330,000 in Kenya. No one talks about it. But if we had a free trade at the end of the day, we would have an equivalent. Governance would be easy because we would have something we share, and there would be solidarity because of that point of identity that we have something in common. And in so doing, in the long run, we can achieve it. But we cannot achieve it in one day. We can achieve it in a phased manner. Let's first open our borders. Yeah. Let's first trade together. Let's first have a common currency. In the long run, maybe when we are no longer alive, those that will be there shall have so much in common that they will sit and have a reason to integrate.
Thank you. I want to wake up one day when I can just get out of my house, jump onto a bus, rush to Mombasa, no one asks anything, drive out, go out to Kinshasa, drive back to Uganda, just like that. I want to see the people I see on the streets of Kampala, get your tomatoes, rush them to Kigali, sell them, return to Uganda on a bus. No one is asking for a passport. No one is asking which country are you from, who is your president, how long has he been there, how did you vote. I want to wake up one day.
What are you here to do?
What
For
are you
how
here
long?
to do?
Do you have insurance? Does your car have insurance? Have you changed your money?
You know, you have to go through Forex. I want to wake up one day and I want to see that. And hopefully I see it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the amazing views you bring to the inter-university debates, and thank you so much for making time for this show. Thank you. We appreciate you. And we always wish we can always have you back and back and back. Thank you so much to your viewers for always keeping it Civic Space TV and the inter-university debates. We appreciate your time, we appreciate your attention, we appreciate your feedback, we appreciate you being with us and choosing to be with us. Special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for powering us, for making us able to do whatever we do. Special thanks to the people behind the machines, a couple of ladies and gentlemen out there. Yes, Civic Space has very many ladies making things happen, and that is a step in the right direction in the name of gender equality. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you in a special way. We continue to call for peace in all the regions of the world that have turmoil. We call for peace in the Sudan, peace in Libya, peace in Chad, peace in Somalia, peace in the DRC, peace in Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, Mozambique, peace in the Gaza, peace in Ukraine, peace wherever peace needs to be. Thank you. We say good evening, and may you have freedom.